Today we're going to look at the National Sheep Improvement Program and see how it can be used in a positive way to help the St. Croix sheep breed. The NSIP program has a lot of good potential, and I want you to know that whatever I say that might appear negative about it is in the form of constructive criticism, because I believe it really has a lot of good solutions for us. The website is at nsip.org, but right now it's got some sort of problem with the certificate on the website. This is February 28th, 2025, and it is a trustworthy website. They just got a certificate problem today, but you'll be able to go to it. So before we look at this website, we need to understand its purpose. There are three main categories of sheep producers. There's breeders, there's commercial producers, and then there's the homesteaders or the backyard sheep growers. Most of the people watching this video are probably homesteaders or backyard sheep growers. The National Sheep Improvement Program is really made for breeders. It's for people who are trying to keep up with the pedigree, to find out certain genetic traits which they hope to enhance to actually make their breed better. From this effort, they'll take their show stock and show it and win awards, and that will help them sell more sheep that are registered. The large commercial sheep operations will buy this registered stock to improve their herd, and the smaller backyard sheep growers or homesteaders will also benefit from the NSIP by buying this same improved registered stock from the breeder. The National Sheep Improvement Program provides software that helps you with the estimated breeding value, or EBV, for sheep, and it puts a quantitative or a number value for any type of genetic advantage a sheep may have. By using EBVs and selective breeding is the way they hope to improve the breed. The NSIP provides free software for handling the genetics of your sheep, but when you go to enroll, it's about $100 a year with a maximum cap of $500 a year. I think it's $2.50 for every ewe. If you go to their main page, you can click on this Find Stock with EBVs tab, and then click on this Sheep Breeders tab, and that'll bring you to this page that will give you a list of NSIP sheep breeders, or people who are actually using their estimated breeding values to improve their breed. And if you scroll down this list, you'll see all the different types of breeds they support, with the exception of the St. Croix. They don't have the St. Croix listed here. They do have the Katahdin. And they don't have support for the Barbados Black Belly or Gulf Coast Native, because they believe that these breeds are too small for the commercial sheep market. Well, I hate to tell the NSIP people this, but the sheep industry is on the ropes. It's been going down since 2005 based on the statistics from the USDA because of all the Australian imports that are totally decimating our sheep industry. And if you don't believe these USDA charts about what's happening to the sheep industry, how it's on a crash course to destruction, you can listen to these Idaho farmers who have been raising sheep for generations and are going broke because they can't make any money at it. Or you can listen to Bill Bullard, who's a U.S. cattle industry spokesman, tell you what's wrong with our sheep industry and why nobody can make a living doing it anymore. It's these Australian imports. They're killing the industry. And by trying to grow bigger sheep, the NSIP is really just rearranging deck chairs on the deck of the Titanic. I mean, they're not avoiding the iceberg. Maybe what the NSIP could do is to provide estimated breeding values for those who want to sell organic sheep. But the problem with that is that every dewormer is on the prohibited list for getting your organic certification. So if you're using dewormers, forget ever having organic stock, organic certification for your sheep. And nearly every one of these breeds supported by the NSIP requires dewormers to survive. Yet you can sell organic sheep for more money than these Australian imports, and that might be the way to come out ahead. And these Australian imports can't be certified USDA because they were raised outside the USDA's jurisdiction or oversight. So the Australian imports could never compete with U.S. domestic production of organic sheep. And that's really where we need to concentrate on improving the breed. The other benefit of working with EBVs for organic sheep is you never need to do fecal egg counts because it's either a pass or a fail. Either the sheep can live without chemical dewormers, or it needs them. And it either dies or it lives. If it lives, then it's how healthy is the sheep, how big, how well developed it is. And so you no longer have to look at McMaster slides and count the number of different little bugs and eggs and all kinds of worms that are inside this poop. You really just look at the health of the sheep, and that if it's organic without dewormers, you don't care. And there's no way you could ever do fecal egg counts on an entire herd of 200 sheep, but you can look at 200 sheep and call out all the weak. The other thing that's wrong with the National Sheep Improvement Program is that they focus entirely on how fast the sheep grows and how big the sheep is going to get. Yet the Callipig mutation, which makes the hindquarters of a sheep grow much larger and faster, it also produces much tougher meat. And many people discredit any kind of Callipig sheep because the meat is so tough. And they do have estimated breeding values for the toughness of the meat using a Warner Braxler shear force machine. This machine uses a small drill press to take out plugs out of the meat, and then they get these standard size plugs, which they then use a standard size blade to cut through with a machine, and that tells them how much force was used and how tough the meat is. I doubt that anyone using the NSIP software has a Warner Braxler machine to determine the shear force of the meat they produce. They're probably also not looking at the meat under a microscope to see any kind of fat that's deposited inside the muscles, which is one advantage the St. Croix has. It has a very lean amount of meat inside the muscle tissue, and it has a really good flavor. So there's not a lot of judging going on, or EBVs, or estimated breeding values for how the meat actually tastes. And while the NSIP does have an estimated breeding value for the feed conversion ratio, what they're not telling you is that this is cross purposes with growing a larger animal. The bigger the animal is, the more energy it takes for it to move, for it to do anything. So the feed conversion ratio is the best for the smallest animal. So while cattle have a feed conversion ratio of 12.5, which means for every 12 pounds of feed you give it, you get back 1 pound of meat, sheep have between 4 and 6 of a feed conversion ratio. And notice also it's looking at feed. It really can't look at grass. There's no way to really find out which sheep really thrive on grass. The commercial sheep breeds have been bred to grow quickly on feed, while the St. Croix is still more of a better grass-fed type breed. And so there is no feed conversion ratio for the grass-fed St. Croix because you can't tell how much grass they're eating. Now, I did notice that when I raised another breed besides St. Croix, it was more of a commercial breed. It put on weight a lot quicker, but it seemed to be eating about twice the amount of grass that the St. Croix did. Regardless, the smaller the animal is, the more efficient it is in converting feed to meat. So this idea of raising the biggest sheep in the world using estimated breeding values, it may be going the wrong way. You may be creating a monster. There's a perfect size animal for every purpose. For example, for a racehorse, there's a perfect size racehorse, and no one ever tries to take a pony to the Kentucky Derby or the Preakness. they take a certain size racehorse. At the same time, nobody has ever won the Kentucky Derby with a Clydesdale or some sort of draft horse. The Clydesdale is too big, so bigger is not always better. On the island of Soy off the coast of Scotland, there's a flock of sheep that were brought there by the Vikings. They've lived there for over 1,000 years now without human intervention, and they go through times of famine and the weather changes, and about 2/3 of the flock is lost, and then only the strong survive. Well, what size sheep are the most efficient? This will tell you. Soy sheep weigh between 55 and 85 pounds. They're very, very small, as that is the most efficient size sheep. So maybe we could use the estimated breeding values and the way of calculating their genetic potential to grow the most efficient sheep that taste the best and produce the most valuable product, which would be organic sheep. Maybe that's where we need to go with NSIP. I hope all these ideas are a positive influence for someone, and that you can use these same techniques just in a little bit different way and get a better outcome. Well, thanks for listening to the video. Thanks.